Hello, this is Paolo, and welcome to the third installment of the Blender Survival Guide. Up to this point, we have created our customized desktop, and that is very nice, very useful, but it's about time that we start creating something with Blender. And if you are an After Effects artist trying to embrace the world of real 3D modeling to extend your compositions, well, I know what you want. You want 3D text. And that is perfect because it gives us the opportunity to see many different commands in action, many different techniques used in Blender to create 3D objects. And if you don't like 3D text, bear with us. You'll see that this stuff is going to be really useful. So, let's begin. This is our scene. This is where we left off from the previous lesson. Everything is almost in the right place. So here is our default scene. Let's start removing this cube as we did before. Right-click on the cube, X, and then confirm the deletion. It's gone. So before we go and create a new text, let's talk about this little guy here, this crosshair in the middle of the screen. That is called the 3D cursor, and the 3D cursor is one of the most useful tools in Blender. I wish every other 3D application had something like this. The 3D cursor is telling you where the next object will be created in the 3D environment. Okay, and if you are like many newcomers to Blender, the first thing you try to do is to click around and the 3D cursor moves like this, which is a little bit frustrating because initially we wonder what is the purpose of that object. Well, as I said, the cursor shows where the object that you create will be created next. So if you move the cursor here and then you create an object, it will appear exactly in this point. But what if you decide that you clicked by mistake and you want the 3D cursor to be back in the original spot where the coordinates are x0, y0, and z0? So don't try to click close enough, try to make it, match. There is a very easy shortcut. You press Shift-C. And Shift-C is basically center the cursor. Okay? With Shift-C, the cursor goes back to the origin and the window gets centered. So Shift-C, the cursor is back in place. Now let's press Shift-A. Shift-A calls the toolbox, which is this pop-up menu that is used to create all objects in Blender. In Blender 2.49, you can also use the spacebar. So if you press ESC now and you press the spacebar, works the same. But I know that in Blender 2.5, only Shift-A calls the toolbox. So it's a good habit to use that shortcut. Okay? In the toolbox, we see that there is an Add menu. In the Add menu, we have Mesh, Curve, Surface, Meta, whatever that is, Text, text, and so on. You see that we can create lamps, which are lights, spotlights, lamps, sunlights, etc. We can create new cameras. You want to shoot like Tony Scott, 6 cameras are rolling at the same time, multiple points of view, knock yourself out. You can create as many cameras as you want in your scene. Be careful though. So let's create some text. We click on text and oh, look here. There is some text. And I can imagine what you're just thinking. It's like, big deal. I'm using a 3D program and I'm getting some flat looking text lying on the floor. Well, Blender allows you to create all kinds of complicated text, Uh, but let's start with a simple one, you know. And yes, this text is lying on the floor. Let's take a look at this from the top view. Okay, so this is our top view. We zoom in. It's our text. Well, first of all, let's bring it up. Let's make it vertical. Okay, so we look in the right view. Now, here is an interesting point. I'm here in the right view, okay, or I'm moving the top view. When I need to do something in Blender, I don't need to click on the view. Okay, if I click, the only thing I do is to move the 3D cursor. I don't need to click on the view. I can just move the mouse, and Blender tries to help you, to save you from carpal tunnel syndrome. Don't need to click. If your mouse is in this window, then whatever you want to do is assumed it will be done in that window. If I move the mouse over here, that is my sphere of influence. So right now I'm in the top view, okay? Top view here. So let's say that I want to rotate this text. I want to bring it up vertical. The command for rotate in Blender, very surprisingly, is press the R key. R. And then you start moving with the mouse, okay? And this is not doing what we want to do. You know, if you look at the camera view right here, we see that the text is rotating, all right, but it's rotating still on the floor. Let's press ESC. Rotation happens in a view along the perpendicular axis to the view. So in this case, it will be the z-axis, because x and y, we see them in this direction. Z is the vertical axis in Blender. So the axis is perpendicular to our top view. That is the axis that is used for the rotation. Now, if I move without clicking, and I go to the right view, now let's zoom in a little bit, and I press R, and now I move the mouse. If you look at the camera view, look here, if I move the mouse, well, I see that the text is going vertical. And if I pay even more attention to this area here, where it says ROT for rotation, well, that number is telling me my angle of rotation right now. And you see this is minus 86.19 degrees. Why minus? Because positive rotations are in the clockwise direction, and counterclockwise from the 0 are negative. So I could try to get this right there as perfectly 90 degrees as I can. But look, let's press ESC, okay? Nothing is done. So if you're in the middle of the rotation, you want to just cancel it, press ESC. Let's start over. Let's press R for rotation, and we type directly minus 90. And that is directly the amount of rotation in degrees that we want. Minus 90, press enter, done. Now we still have flat text, but at least it's a vertical. All right. So next thing what we want to do is, well, let's change it, because as pretty as this is, I bet you have clients that say, you know what, I really don't want to have the word text in my commercial, film, whatever. I want something different. Okay, let's take a look up here. See, this menu, whatever that is, says we are in object mode. Object mode is when you edit the whole object. Like in this case, we just rotated it. If I press S for scale, then I can scale this object, the whole object, okay? Let's press ESC. So object mode applies changes to the whole object. In this case, it's a text object. Well, if I want to change it, well, you press Tab. When you press Tab, you switch to Edit Mode. And Edit Mode, you see it's represented by this triangle with dots. It's basically showing you the ability to modify the single vertices if you're dealing with a geometry object. But if you're dealing with a text object, you're basically changing the single letters. And you see that we have a big vertical bar, which is representing the text cursor. And so we press backspace on the PC or delete on the Mac a few times. And let's write something like 3D text. Then I'll press Enter to go to the next line. Then I press 4. Then I enter again. And let's say After Effects, because we're going to export this to After Effects. Then I press Tab again. Let's move it around a little bit. And now here we have our 3D text. Isn't that nice? I mean, it's still flat, but at least it moves in a 3D space. So two issues here. First of all, I don't like the alignment. And this text still doesn't have any depth. Let's switch to the buttons panel here and click on this button here that says Editing. And with the text still highlighted, now we can change every single parameter. So for example, I can click on this and say Center, and now my text is aligned centered. Okay, this is an improvement. So let's say that I want to make this 3D finally. Okay, so see this parameter here that says extrude? Click on the arrow 1, 2 times, and now we have 3D text. Real 3D text. Okay. And we move the camera. It looks real. It's beautiful. Now, I don't like the 3D text to be in the middle of the floor. I mean, let's consider this grid the floor. So, again, we can see another operation of Blender, how to move objects. We saw just how to rotate objects, how to scale them. Let's see how we move them. Well, you see this gizmo here with the 3D axis. This is our move tool, and we can just grab an axis and move our object any place we want. If we switch back to our one of our views, like in this case the front view, while I'm moving in this window, I can check on the front view here where the text falls, and right here it's almost on the floor. That is perfect. Now we have text that is on the floor. It says 3D text for After Effects. You know what? I like to have a little bevel, and so we click on the bevel depth right here. 1, 2, 3 times. Maybe 3 is too much. 2 times. There you go. Now we have a nice, sharp bevel. Pretty cool, isn't it? All right. Now, if we look at this view here, this is our camera point of view. And this is showing basically the frame. I don't really like it. It doesn't do anything for me. So let's move the camera and create a more dramatic angle. So let me show this in this way, zoom out a little bit. Okay, now I can see my camera right here, and let's see this scene from the side. Good. All right, as you can see, the text is right now selected. We can see it from the pink outline. Let's right click on the camera, bring it down using the gizmo, the position gizmo, and let's move it near the floor like this. Okay, and then let's switch to this view and bring the camera more in front of the text, like this. Okay. Nothing is in the frame though. So how about rotating the camera? Now if I rotate the camera from this scene, from this window, I press R and I rotate, you see that the effect is not really what I wanted. It's rotating along the x-axis, but is creating that diagonal movement, not really what I want. All right, there are a couple of different options here. Actually, more than a couple, but let's move this. And you see this toolbox here? This toolbar, actually. Okay, this is basically the 3D transform, and this is what it shows this gizmo here. Now, if I click, you can see that it's highlighted, it's pressed. If I click again, if I click on the hand just, the gizmo goes away in this window. It's still available in this window. And now you can see that basically this effect is local. But I can disable it, enable it, and disable it as I like. Why would you disable that? Because sometimes the gizmo gets in the way. So you want to remove it. Okay. But there is this other possibility here. There is a circle, which is the icon for the rotate manipulator. And I can just click on this, and now I have a rotate widget. Ooh, so now I can take my camera, clicking on this axis, and then I can click on this red axis. Isn't that nice? And then they say Blender is difficult. I don't know how can you make it any easier. Oh, I know. I can click on the translate manipulator while holding the shift. It's like when you select multiple words, multiple characters in a word processor, you press shift to select multiple areas at the same time. You shift click on this manipulator. Now we have the rotate and translate manipulator. So I can click on one of the axes, move the camera down, move the camera sideways, and then rotate it a little bit to create that, dramatic angle, and click like this. Okay, we're gonna bring it down and have this nice 3D effect. Well, let's move it a little bit sideways and rotate for compensating the offset, and maybe just a little more. Now we are talking about 3D text. Well, we still have a lot of space in the frame. Let's come closer a little bit. Nice. All right. What about rendering this scene right now? Excellent. Let's click on the Scene button. The Scene button gives us all the controls for the rendering. We just saw that before when we created the new desktop, but let's go back there. So we click on this, and we have a very handy button called Render, and let's click on it. All right, this is really not what I wanted. Apparently, our light is wrong. And that teaches us a very important lesson. Place your lights carefully. Because, well, 3D acts like the real world. If the light is behind the subject, then you will not see the face of the subject. Let's close this window. In fact, our light, look at that, it's just in the wrong position. That position does nothing. So you know what? Let's start over. Let's delete that light, okay? Because that light, by the way, as you see just a round light like that light is basically a light bulb. And a light bulb doesn't really work in lighting. When we are talking about cinematic lighting, cinematography, you will not see cinematographers lighting a scene with light bulbs. They use spotlights most of the time. They use diffusion. They use all kind of controllable sources. Let's delete that. X, erase it. Now, of course, we have no light. Let's switch to the top view in this view here. Move our cursor our 3D cursor here. Now we see from the front view that while the cursor is in the OK position here, it's too low. So let's move it here. Okay, so now it's positioned in a 3D space correctly. Shift A, add lamp. Let's use a spotlight, okay? Spot. Now the spot, we see it's rotated in this view, in this point here. See how it's positioned? Not what we wanted? Not the problem. Let's bring this up a little bit, and I'll use the R key this time. I don't use the rotate gizmo, just R. Move it in the right position. We can eyeball this. Then let's move to our top view. Again, press R. This time it will be rotating in this direction. Very easy, very simple. And then I want to move the entire object, the entire lamp, a little in this direction. And you see that these arrows here don't really point in the right direction for me. So let's disable for a second the rotate manipulator by shift clicking again. And there is an alternative to the translate tool, this gizmo here. You use the G key, type G, and that is for grab. So you grab your object, and now you can move the object freely with the mouse, which sometimes is much more preferable. And I think this is just the right point. Click, and maybe we can rotate this a little more up like this. Good. Let's try a render. Let's click. All right. We see the text. It's not really a great lighting, but this is not a lesson about lighting. This is a lesson about getting stuff done in the shortest amount of time possible. We are somewhere. You know what? We can achieve a lot more by just adding one more light. So let's close this window, and I'll move my 3D cursor right here. Okay, Shift A, create another lamp, and we'll use another spot. Okay, let's do pretty much the same thing. Move it here, R, rotate it up, switch to this top view, rotate toward the object. Okay, and you can see the cone of our spotlight. It tells us what is the angle of lighting of this spotlight. This line that you see in the middle is the direction of the shadow. Now, I don't want a shadow for both spotlights. I want to have a shadow from this direction. I don't want a secondary shadow here. Okay? If you think that that is unrealistic, think again. Because in cinematography, all the time, cinematographers use soft lights, diffuse panels that are used to project a large light without shadows, with very, very soft or invisible shadows. So how do we get rid of this? We have our light selected, and we go to this button here. And this button is calling itself shading, shading of materials. Shading means different things for different objects. If you're working with an object like this, a geometry object, then you end up with materials. If you're handling a light, when you click on this, you'll have a nice icon that symbolizes the light, and a lot of different options here. And in this case, under shadow and spot, we have the option to use a ray trace shadow or a shadow buffer shadow. Shadow buffers generally are preferable because they're much, much faster, and they can create more easily soft shadows, which are more typical of your studio lighting. But I don't want either one or the other. So I just click on the button again, and now you can see that the line symbolizing the direction of the shadow is gone. So now we have two lights let's do a render. Let's click on our scene button, click on render. It's not artistic, but it works. So at this point, I'm going to stop the lesson. This is a lot of material to digest. My name is Paolo Ciccone, and I'll see you with the next video. Happy blendering!